Hi everyone, this is Katrina Rasbold with a class on the Limpia, cleansing the mind, body, and spirit. This is a lengthy class, so you may want to watch it in segments. This is a class that I originally presented at PantheaCon 2020. We ended up having to turn away almost as many people as we were able to get in the room, so I'm creating this video for those who might have been turned away and also for those who may have an interest in the Limpia. Again, my name is Katrina Rasbold. I am the co-owner of Crossroads Metaphysical Store in Shingle Springs, California. I own the store with my husband, Eric, and we have been, we've owned metaphysical stores for around 7 years now in various configurations. We just opened Crossroads Metaphysical Store March 29th of 2019, and we love being there. One of the primary functions that I serve in that particular store is that I do spiritual cleansings. I remove entities from people, attachments, hooks from past life traumas, things that hold them back in their day-to-day life. I have written over 30 books on various aspects of magic, including Crossroads of Conjure, which came out in 2018, and I have 2 upcoming books coming out. All of these are through Llewellyn. The Sacred Art of Brujeria, which comes out in June of 2020, and Healing from Psychic Attack, which should be out sometime in the winter or spring that's coming up. I am quite succinctly a professional witch for hire. That's what I do, is I work magic for other people on their behalf. I do candle work, I do honey pots, I do exorcisms, I do bindings, and I also do these energetic cleansings that help people hit the reset button and basically remove any influence from their energetic field that is not organic to them. So if someone else is influencing a person energetically, either through a curse or a hex, or even through old memories or old programming that's creating a problem, my job is to go in there and remove it. I'm an energetic healer. I'm also a tarotologist and wrote the book Tarot for Real People. I'm the president of Northwestern Circles Association and the director of the annual Pangaea Festival that Northwestern Circles Association puts on in Fair Oaks, California each year. I'm also the organizer of the original Black Hat Society of Northern California. There is a Northern California Black Hat Society that is not affiliated with us. They came along significantly later. I think that was in 2017 that they open shop, but we were founded in 2009 by Gail Detmar, and that's a whole different organization. I presented at PantheaCon for the past 6 years. I also have presented at our festival, the Pangaea Festival, as well as Sacramento Pagan Pride. I am the co-host of a wonderful broadcast called What's Up Witches that I host with Shannon McLaren every Thursday night. That's on Facebook, so you would go to facebook.com/crossroadsoccult, join the live stream at 7 o'clock on Thursday night, that's Pacific time. I also have a number of classes on YouTube at youtube.com, Katrina Rasbold, and I blog at Patheos at patheos.com/blog/energymagic. So that's where you can find me on the internet and in bookstores and throughout the world, and that's what I do. I've been a witch for almost 40 years now, and I have worked professionally cleansing and helping people for around 7 or 8 years since I trained with 2 brujos and a bruja many, many years ago. So the Limpia is the system of cleansing that I use. Now, I do want to point out that there are many ways to perform a Limpia, and all are very valid. There are a number of different modalities because the Limpia is a procedure that developed in isolated places throughout Mesoamerica. And so people learn to do it in different ways, and all of them are usually quite effective. This is the way I was taught to do it. I also built on the way that I was taught to do it to include other different techniques. So some of the techniques may look familiar to you, but this is the basic structure of what I was taught and how I work. You may not work that way if you do Limpias. That doesn't mean that you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. It's just a different way of doing basically the same thing. So let's talk first about what is a Limpia. Limpia is an aggressive, energetic cleansing, and it forms the foundation for any other magical work I'm going to do for a person. So if let's say I've got somebody who's coming in who has trouble finding love. Their love life is just wrecked. I'm going to perform a Limpia on them before I start the candle work, before I do the honey pot, before I start to do any other type of mojo bag work or anything like that. I'm going to do the Limpia because I want to remove their attachment to past relationships. I want to remove any negative notions they may have about their worthiness to receive love. Basically, I want to get a clean and clear vessel to receive the magic that I am going to put into it, or that I'm going to lead them to engage. The Limpia can diagnose existing conditions, it can clear the energetic system, it can heal, it can renew, and it can transform on many different levels. The Limpia itself breaks down into 4 separate parts. The first is the platica. The second is the sage bath. The third is the egg work. And the fourth is the barita. Now, this is the way that I do it. Other people do it in different ways. And each part is just as important as any of the other ones. It's a process that we move through when we're performing the Limpia. The Limpia is going to address problems like disease, because we believe that disease or dis-ease occurs on many different levels: mind, body, spirit. We can have social dis-ease, we can have cultural dis-ease, and so this is to clear disease throughout our body. Misfortune, entities, demons, hooks, attach hooks that are from the past, old soundtracks that move through our head and limit our way of thinking, attachments, that sort of thing. Anything that's holding you back, anything that is not organic to you or that was put there by somebody, we can remove with Limpia. So we do the cleansing at the beginning of the work before we do any other magical work to create a clean vessel to receive further energy work. Sometimes the Limpia can stand on its own. Sometimes the Limpia is enough, and that removing a curse or a hex or an attachment to the past can help the person heal and move forward without doing further magical work. That's why, one of the reasons why we always do the Limpia first. The Limpia is based on the theory that mind and body and spirit all remember and retain the traumas that we experience in life. Now, the traumas that we experience don't have to be extreme. Sometimes they are, but they could be physical abuse, they could be emotional abuse, they could be social trauma such as gossip, it could be a cursing or a crossing, it could be a hex, it could be a magical trauma, it could be that someone sent you bad energy, it could be mal de ojo or evil eye. It can also be an entity, because what happens is that there are entities that we don't see that share our living space in this world. And those Limpias feed on energy. They feed on vitality. And so sometimes what will happen is you have somebody even walking through a department store that says, oh gosh, I suddenly don't feel well. I feel really heavy and uncomfortable. I think I'm getting sick. And the person who just walked by them starts to feel better. What's happened is that there was an entity that was in the person that walked past them that had sapped out their vitality, their energy, their good fortune. Anything that tastes yummy, that entity will absorb. And basically that other person became kind of a chewed up piece of gum, and the entity was looking for a warm spirit to latch onto that would be new and delicious and have all of this good energy. People who do energetic work, who are healers, often attract these entities more so than other people because they're running a lot of good positive energy. So we can pick up an entity in Walmart. We can pick up an entity in the grocery store just from it hopping from one warm body to the next. And so Limpias can remove those entities and get them away from the person that they attach onto in this parasitic way. People, unfortunately, also will send entities and curses and hexes to each other. And that can tap your vitality. It can get in the way of your good fortune and create hardship. So the Limpia is designed to remove from your mind, body, and spirit, the things that are keeping you from being successful, the things that are interfering with your thought processes and creating limiting thoughts, or making you make bad decisions and create negative outcomes. So sometimes we can have non-physical traumas such as gossip or broken heart or emotional abuse that will manifest through physical symptoms. So you can have physical symptoms that don't have a physiological cause because they're caused by an emotional trauma. And the Limpia can help that as well. So if we address those underlying energetic causes, it can help the body to release the physical symptoms. Now, sometimes you fell and you broke your leg. That is a physical problem. You're going to have physical symptoms. So the Limpia is designed to heal energetic systems and physical problems that are caused by energetic I can't even talk. Energetic maldades is what we call them, bad things, energetic interruptions. So again, there are lots of different kinds of Limpias. These are the techniques I teach to my students when I'm teaching the Brujeria series, and they have done very, very well by taking these techniques out into the world as healers. So the Limpia is going to work through a pretty sophisticated study of the chakras, of the meridians, and the basic overall energetic flow within the body. The most common thing that I hear when someone has completed a Limpia with me is that they feel lighter. It's as though it lightens and it pulls the darkness away. It pulls away the heaviness that weighs on us. Now, there are many different tools that we would use to conduct a Limpia, and I like to have all of these available to me just in case I need them. There are some I will always use, and then there are some that I like to have on hand just in case I need them. So frequently, almost always in fact, I'm going to use white sage. Now there are some people that have a sensitivity to white sage, and if that's the case, we can use sprays or we can use Palo Santo, but I really prefer the white sage. It just has a cleansing, antibiotic, energetic push that I enjoy. So for the sage bath in particular, I really like to hotbox that person with sage if it's something they can physically undergo. Palo Santo is a holy wood that we burn to add protection and also to purify. We can use sacred sprays such as Florida water. Right here you can see the Pastor Davis 7 African Powers that I like to use. I make my own 7 African Powers as well. Fiery Wall of Protection spray I use. Cut and clear spray. We also can use a smudge spray. And these are kind of like personal Febreze that we put on you to help do the similar thing to sage. I like to end the Limpia with the spray as a blessing. I also put it on the egg before I use the egg to cleanse. We can use oils to anoint and protect and bless the person. We might use holy water. We will frequently use blessed water, which is just tap water that has some oils or sprays added to it to fortify it. We use a drum, a chime, or a rattle to move the energy in a specific way. So let's talk about each of those in turn. Now, a drum, for instance, is going to solidify energy. Boom, 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 boom. It gets the energy really drummed into you. A chime, on the other hand, can either raise or lower your vibration and therefore your energy. So if we want to raise the energy, say, of a chakra that's firing oddly, then we can start at the lowest chime, which is the biggest one, boom, 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 and go upward, and that raises the energy. We can lower it if we've got a hyperactive chakra by starting at the smaller chime, boom, 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 and taking it down. The rattle will almost always raise energy. So again, if I got a chakra that's dead or it's just not firing very well, the rattle will help build the energy of that chakra. Sometimes we have people that have not been sexually responsive for a very long time, and we can use the rattle to help build that first and second chakra energy to elicit those responses and clear those pathways again. We use eggs in almost every Limpia. The egg is used as a living cell, even though science tells us that it is not. We view it as something that had potential to become a living creature and therefore is receptive to life. So we use the egg to absorb a little bit of the essence of the person. Then we rub the egg all over the client to absorb the negativity and anything that needs to come out of their body. Eggs also can represent a new start. We use wooden matches to light the sage and anything that we engage with the Limpia. The match itself is said to possess a life force within the sulfur. So we use the matches instead of a bic or a lighter to light the sage. We might use a feather fan, and I prefer a pheasant wing actually, a soft broom, or some branches for the burrito, which is a sweeping type of action. The branches, if you use them, should be gathered in threes. So if you're using branches from a bush, get them in denominations of 3, and then you leave an offering for the plant. Usually it's going to be silver dimes. If you have any candles that you want to use to assist the client, say an uncrossing candle or a cast out evil candle, then you would light that as the Limpia begins, and you can actually reach your fingers into the candle and grab the flame and just kind of push it to different parts of the client to get that energy of the candle toward them and not have the flame go out. We use a sacred blade, a knife, to cut away unwanted ties. We are not actively cutting the client. We are just rubbing it along the surface of their skin to disconnect unwanted ties or connections to bad habits or bad behaviors or any other condition we need to separate out, such as cords to a bad relationship that they're holding on to. I use a pendulum every time I do a Limpia to check the chakras. So I'll start at the crown chakra and move down to the third eye, and then down to the throat, to the heart, to the solar plexus, to the sacrum, and to the root chakra. I hold it in front of the chakra and I watch the movement of the pendulum. I'm looking for a very gentle sway. If the pendulum begins to move very erratically or in a huge fashion, a very exaggerated movement, then I know I have a hyperactive chakra that's kind of blown open. If the pendulum doesn't move at all, I know I have a blocked chakra and I need to work on removing that blockage. The hyperactivity of a chakra is usually something that's going to happen due to trauma. So what I'm going to do is, as I start the Limpia, I will use the pendulum to check the chakra condition, and then I will check again before I send the client on their way to make sure that all those chakras are firing normally. I will sometimes use crystal singing bowls to balance the chakras, to open them up, to get them harmonizing. And sometimes I'll use the chakra stones like you see here to put onto the chakras to encourage the appropriate vibration for that chakra. So let's move on to step 1, the platica. Step 1 is one of the most important processes of the Limpia. It's a talk, but mostly the person receiving the Limpia is going to be talking. So I'm mostly listening, guiding a little bit as they purge. It's almost like a confession. And a lot of times people are coming in to me when they are in, kind of hanging on to the last thread of their rope. They're really at a point that they don't know what else to do, so they're in crisis. So letting them talk this out is very cathartic for them. So I'm listening without judgment. I'm hearing them, and while I'm listening to them, planning how to best help them, how to guide them through the magical sort of avenues they're going to explore as far as candles go, or any atonement they might need to do, and any cleansing and clearing that we're going to do. So this is going to take up the majority of the Limpia time. Most of my Limpias go into 50-minute sessions, and this will be at least 40 minutes of the session is the platica, where we are listening to what's happening with that client. During times of famine, there would be mass platicas in Mexico, and it was thought that the unburdening of all of those souls confessing would appease the gods and relieve the suffering. So anything that happens during the platica is treated with the strictest of confidence. I don't tell my spouse. I don't tell other healers unless I have permission from the client to do so. I keep all of that to myself. And in the platica, we are going to work our way through one trauma at a time. So if they are discussing their love life and how horrible that is, and they start getting into their financial life and how jacked up that is, I'm going to take them back to the love life until we get through that. Then we address the finances, one trauma at a time. Clients will often laugh or cough or cry or rant or sneeze or sweat or shake during the platica as they have this emotional release. We usually burn copal during the platica. That's the traditional incense or resin to burn. Sometimes I will give the person homework and tell them, I need you to go home and write a list of all the things that you want in a relationship. Or I want you to go home and write a list of the pros and cons of the relationship that you're in. I want you to have this conversation with your mom. I want you to fill out 5 job applications and see which one responds. When we're finally done with the platica, then it's time for us to move on to the next phase of the Limpia, which is the more hands-on part. And speaking of hands, every time we move our hands for a Limpia, it has a significant meaning. So if we're moving our hands in the shape of a triangle, say we go to the throat and down to each breast and back up again, it strengthens intention. We use it for affirmations and blessings and dedications. So if I'm wanting to get a strong message into the client, I'll say it as I'm drawing a triangle across their chest, including their heart chakra, usually starting up at the throat because that's the chakra center for communication. If we're using a circle, then we're trying to change a situation. We're creating influence. We are diffusing a really tense situation. Sometimes if a client is telling me something and the emotions are getting very strong, I'll just move my hand in front of me in a circle to help diffuse those really dense energies. If I move my hand in a square, say from shoulder, hip, shoulder, and over to the other shoulder again, that's going to stabilize and seal what I've done. Oftentimes I'll do this with the drum so that I'm drumming onto their body in the shape of a square to finalize my work. Crujitas are little crosses, so we'll sometimes move the sage in a direction of a cross to bless and purify the client. And sometimes we'll use direct lines to pull out hooks or the little maldaldes, the bad things that are in them. We'll just reach fingers in and just pull away from their energy system anything that's being disruptive that we can tell is interrupting the flow of energy through them, or any impurities that we'll see. Sometimes when I'm working on a client, it'll look like they're almost encased in spider webbing or something, and I'll just keep pulling all of that spider webbing aside until I can see their energy field in there. Likewise, if I want to take something from myself and put it into the client, I'll use a direct line. So if I'm thinking a thought of, you deserve love, I'll touch my temple and put it to their temple to give them that thought. If I have love in my heart for them, I'll touch my heart and then put it to their heart, and then create just a direct line of movement between me and them. So next, after this, we go on to the sage bath. This is really our first physical interaction with the client. And so usually I will tell the client, listen, I'm going to be touching you in some pretty familiar ways, because as you do the sage bath and moving on to the egg work, you really want to get right up in there and not be weird about touching places that have the built up or the condensed negative energy. We got to get right in there and clean them out. I also, of course, will ask the client if they have a sensitivity to white sage, and if it's going to be a problem for them to be surrounded by sage, because I use a lot of sage in this procedure. I go into my sacred space. Of course, during the platica, I'm also in sacred space so that I can channel down any information that higher self or divine power wants to share with them or wants me to know about them. I don't tell my clients everything I get. Sometimes my spirit guides are telling me something that's for me about the client, so that I make note of that. So we go into our sacred space again, and we start at the top of the head, and we cleanse the entire body of the client, getting them completely saged down, paying really close attention to the places where the sage gets very thick. That is usually going to be at the base of the skull, under the arms, under the jawline, in the groin area, right where the leg connects to the body, or the bottoms of the feet. Those are the places where we see the greatest condensations of negative energy. That's because our lymph glands are the places where we release energetic and toxic buildup. So just like we exhale the air that we're not going to use, the carbon dioxide, our bodies exhale the energy that is no longer good for us through the lymph glands and through the bottoms of the feet. And what's interesting about that is if you think about the places on the human body where people consider there to be offensive or objectionable smells, they're usually in line with these areas. So if you look at the jawline, that can come out as bad breath. Under the arms, of course, we have body odor. And then we have crotch smells down where the leg connects to the hip. And then we can have bad smelling feet. And so that's where our bodies get rid of the negative energy that's moving through us. It's how our bodies exhale that energy. So we're going to pay very special attention to those areas when we're smoking the client out with this sage bath. When I'm in the Plotica stage, I can usually tell where the energies are going to be dense. If I've got somebody who's having relationship problems, they're probably going to have a problem with their heart chakra, which is going to radiate out to the lymph glands under the arms. If I've got a person who's having trouble with communication, that's going to be in the jawline and come out through the mouth. So I'm going to be watching what the sage does as far as the density of smoke as I'm moving it all over these clients. My intuition is going to be guiding me a lot. So if you're empathic or if you can see the matrix of energy on a person, this is going to help you phenomenally if you are the one performing the sage bath. So we learn to trust ourselves completely. We trust the divine completely as we're doing this. And once we find that it feels like the sage work is done, either because the sage is now going out or it just feels like we need to move ahead to the next portion, then we go on with the egg work. Now, one thing I want to bring up is this all sounds highly specialized. And it sounds specialized because I've done this for many years. But anybody can do Limpia. Anybody can sage someone. If you've been to, say, a pagan circle or ritual or a Wiccan ritual, you may have been saged as you entered the circle. If you've attended a sweat lodge, you've probably been smudged or saged. So when you're saging a person, they're going to have the benefit even if you don't know what you're looking at. You don't have to know how electricity works to turn on a light in a room. And it's the same thing with the sage bath and the egg work. If you do a sage bath and you do egg work, the person's going to benefit whether you know what you're doing or not. So even though what I do is highly specialized, it doesn't have to be. It's specialized just because I've done it a lot. After you do it a lot, you will find your way for it to be specialized. So please consider that this is something that you can realistically do. So that's how you do a sage bath. You just put the sage, move it all over the person's body, pay attention to what the sage is doing in response to the person's energetic field, and when you're done, it's time to move on to the egg work. When we do the egg work, we are not doing the same thing that we do in hoodoo. Now, when I was working in hoodoo, what we would do is we would take the egg and gently roll it down the person's body for a similar reason. This is much more aggressive than that. With the Limpia, we are scrubbing down the body with the egg. It's very aggressive. So you need to hang on tight to that egg and not let it drop. What we do is we prepare a jar, just like a little canning jar, not a quart, that's too big. We need the smaller sort of pint jar. You're going to fill it maybe halfway full of water. I prefer a jar that does not have a watermark or branding on the outside. That makes it difficult to read the egg. I prefer a smooth jar so that I can see right into what that egg is doing. So we're going to fill it about halfway full of water, and then you're going to spray some sacred spray like Florida water into the water. The egg should be at room temperature. Please don't pull an egg directly out of the refrigerator to use for Limpia. It needs to be as close to body temperature as we can get it, and room temperature is close enough, but the temperature of a refrigerator is too far from body temperature for it to be effective to receive that energy. Because think about what we're doing with the egg. With the egg, we're going to convey the energy of the person into the egg and try to convince the bad things inside the person that the egg is the person. And then we're going to trap those bad things in a jar. It sounds simplistic, but you know what? It works. So if the egg is cold, we can't pull the bad things into it because the bad things want a nice, warm, comfy place to be. So, egg at room temperature. We spray down the egg itself with the same sacred spray that we used in the water. Have the client blow on it pretty hard until you feel the client's essence kind of go into the egg. You'll feel kind of a snap inside when it goes in there. The egg might even get a little bit heavier. I tell the clients, blow on this like you'd blow out a birthday candle. We don't want some little psst blowing. We want a really strong blow into that egg. We're then going to start at the crown of the head and aggressively scrub the egg over the client's entire body. So we're really going to go over that body from the top of the head. I'll usually make some comment about, hey, I'm going to mess up your hair, and get all over their head. Now, of course, when that's happening, we have already told them to maybe take down their hair if they've got it tied up, or to remove any glasses that they've got on top of their head so that we're not getting the sacred spray on that. We're going to pay very close attention to those areas we mentioned before. The base of the neck, the spine, the lymph node areas, any of the chakra points, and the areas that were dense in the sage bath. You may start to feel some knocking in the egg even right away as soon as you get up to the head. Knocking is when you're moving the egg and it's making a knocking sound in there. That tells you that something has already gone into the egg. The egg might get literally heavier. It could grow bigger. Sometimes the eggs will even get goosebumps. Hold on tightly to the egg. Try not to drop it. Sometimes you're going to drop an egg, or sometimes an egg just gets too much energy in it and will burst. If that happens, just collect as much of the egg as you can and move on to another egg. When we finish and we know that we've gotten the entire body and it feels like it's done, we crack the egg, put it into a glass of water, and immediately put the lid on. Now, another thing that you can do while you're doing the egg work is you can hold the egg to the temple, hold the egg to the base of the skull, hold the egg to the forehead or the heart chakra, any place that you really think needs to have more activity go into the egg, where the energy is very dense. Just hold it there and imagine that you're pulling anything negative out of the client as you do that. So crack the egg into the glass of water or the jar of water, cap it up. We're then going to read the egg, and it's important that you know when we read the egg that you're not diagnosing what is now wrong with the client. You're diagnosing what was wrong with the client 10 minutes ago before you started the Limpia. So when they see things come up in the egg, don't let them panic, because that's what was in there, not what is currently in there. If it's in the jar, it's not in the client. The exception is spirit guides. There are certain little things we look for in the egg that tell us that the client has a lot of spirit guide activity around them. The spirit guide bubbles are placeholders for spirit guides. Your spirit guides are not trapped in the jar. So that's one place where that's a little bit different. So let's look at some ways we can read the egg. So this particular egg you can see has a lot of blood in it. Sometimes we will get an egg that's very bloody. Sometimes we'll get an egg that's completely black. And I'm going to show you a lot of different eggs here so that you can see what each formation looks like and what it means. So sometimes the water gets really gross when you dump the egg into it. If that's the case, you know you pulled a lot of negative energies off of that client. Usually with murky water, it's their own negative energies. They have a crappy attitude, or they just are just like Eeyore. The sun is never going to shine. Life is just terrible. Was born under a bad sign. So they just have a lot of negativity around them in general, and that's what you've pulled away. If there's a veil over the yolk, and I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a little bit, then that means that you pulled a lot of depression and confusion off of the client, and also that they're not practicing good self-care. There is a little tail that will sometimes come up at the end of a yolk that is called the child grief formation. It represents unresolved grief over the loss of a child. So this can be through miscarriage or abortion, the death of a child, even a sibling when they were younger, or possibly the person is grieving children they're afraid they will never have if a relationship is ended. The most common reason this comes up is miscarriage or abortion, especially in men, because a lot of times men are not given the opportunity to grieve the loss of that child. If there's a miscarriage, the focus is on the woman for the physiological impact of the miscarriage. And for abortion, a lot of times people are not treated as though they have the right to grieve that choice that they made. And so that unresolved grief builds up in them and can create trauma. There is a fortress formation that you'll see. That means the client is isolated, hermiting, and they fear being attached to other people. If there's red or black in the egg, it is usually something negative like mal de ojo, the evil eye, jealousy or hatred or envy that comes from other people. So the murky water is what comes from you. The red or black is from other people. If there are specks of white on or around the yolk, those are usually old scars and wounds that are affecting the client, that they kind of healed it over and pushed it aside, but they didn't really resolve. If there's dark around the yolk, that means they have an energy vampire around them who's drawing all their power away. And then there's a spectral or a reaper formation. You'll see what that looks like. That means an entity or curse was put on the client, or that they have an entity that they've picked up that is affecting them in some way. We keep that in the jar until the reaper or spectral formation dies off. It'll either break apart, it'll float upwards, or it'll collapse over the egg. So, there's so many ways to read eggs. If there's a lot of yellow down on the bottom of an egg, that means the client's not drinking enough water. They're getting kidney issues. There'll sometimes be a giant bubble attached to the back of the yolk. That's baggage that the client is carrying. It can also be a low-level curse. Sometimes there's a big parachute formation, and it looks like the parachutes on the old mongoose snake drag race Hot Wheels assemblies. And it's just a huge parachute behind the egg. And that is usually a low-level demon that has attached, or a big curse that's come at the person that we have now released. Now that will float up, or it'll collapse over the yolk. And then we have these little clear bubbles that look just like the sky right here. The little clear bubbles represent your spirit guides. And some people have hordes of them. Some people have none. It can be your ancestors. It can be angelic energies. It can be saints. It can be anything on the other side that's pulling for you, that's giving you additional assistance from the other side. And sometimes, like you see here, they will be attached to something that they're pulling away from the yolk. So when we're reading the egg, the yolk is the client. The yolk is you. This is a child grief formation here that I was talking about. It looks like a fetus attached to the egg. And this is the veil that I mentioned, where the person is not practicing good self-care. So when I finish with Limpia, I'm going to cap it up, read it, tell the client what it symbolizes, and then put it aside. Sometimes a client will take it home and put it under their bed for 2 or 3 days to continue drawing negativity out, and then they'll get rid of it. Most of the time, I just get rid of the egg myself. So what we do is we will flush it once everything dies. Traditionally, you release it into a moving body of water, which flushing is a moving body of water. We do not do this until all signs of activity of any demons or entities or any nasties in there have subsided. And you can see them shimmer and wiggle in there. And then you'll not see that anymore, and you know that they've died off. So I'm pretty careful with those, so they're not going back to the nearest warm body that comes along. Whatever you do, of course, do not eat an egg that was used for Limpia. Even, that's not thrill seeking. Don't do that. And you can, however, reuse the jars after you clean out the egg, of course. So let's look at some of these formations so you kind of know what we're looking at. This is a fortress formation. It looks like Superman's crystal cave. I mean, it's just all these jagged pieces that rise up around the yolk to protect it. And that tells us that it's someone who's hermiting, it's somebody who's isolating from other people and distancing, probably because of traumas and hurt. This is the parachute formation I was telling you about. They're usually opaque to white, and they can get pretty aggressive onto the yolk. These are some child grief formations, very common formation, and this again is the veil that I mentioned. This one also has a veil. And these are reaper or spectral formations, and they take on all different shapes, but they come up and really do look like an entity that's hovering over the egg. There is a significant difference in the entity formation and the spectral or entity formation, the reaper formation versus the fortress formation. The fortress formation are jagged edges all around the yolk. The reaper will usually just loom up on one side and kind of tower over the yolk like it's attempting to dominate it. So these are some of the ways that can manifest. Excuse me. These are spirit guide bubbles. And again, we don't have the spirit guides trapped in here. The bubbles are little placeholders and representatives of them. So you can see that this person had so much spirit activity around them. This is something you're very rarely going to see. This is a primary vortex with a bubble right there. That is a major genetic family curse. That is a historical curse. And you can see that there's a lot of baggage behind this person as well. That's the big bubble that I was talking about when I was saying that it usually represents baggage from the past or even a low-level curse. So this person got hit hard because these are two separate events. This is a curse that somebody has put on them. This is a generational curse that was thrown at them. And then this is what happens when a person, over here on the right, when a person is under tremendous pressure from something, either from themselves or from some event. And that is when the egg will actually, the yolk will flatten out and you'll get it looking kind of smushed and not round and whole and healthy looking. And that means the person is under a lot of pressure. Now, after we read the egg and set it aside, we move on to the burrito, and that is where we're sweeping the person. This is done with marigolds sometimes, with branches from bushes, and like I said, I prefer to use the pheasant wing that I'll spray down with Florida water, but we're brushing and sweeping the person to get rid of any remaining negativity that might be on them. Burrito means to sweep. It's another form of limpia, and it's the final cleanse that we use. Might use a fan, a broom, the really soft broom, not one with hard straws, or branches that have been soaked in blessed water. Have them remove their glasses. In this case, I probably would have had her remove her earrings just in case the branches snag one and hurt her. And we just aggressively sweep the client from top to bottom. So if you want to see how all of this comes together, here is a video of Limpia. So we're starting off with the chakra test to see how the chakras are moving. And the gentleman that I'm doing the Limpia on here is an energetic healer, so he's usually pretty clean. So we're going down to the sacral and then to the root chakras. And now I'm putting the spray into the jar for the Limpia. I'm realizing here that I have no eggs in the room. So I'm going to give him a massage stone to hold to drain off any negativity while I go into the kitchen and get some eggs that are out on the counter. You can see in the background the eggs of other Limpias that I've done through the week. This is my working space that I use at Crossroads. And these are Eric's crystal singing bowls that he uses for his sound bath meditation on Fridays. And now we're back. Give me your rock, Maddie. There we go. Now we'll smack these together. And when we slap them together, that discharges energy that's built up in them. So what I'm doing now is just kind of feeling his energetic field to see what it feels like, pulling away anything that feels icky. And we're lighting the sage with the match. Now, I'm very careful about where I get my sage from. I have a supplier that harvests in the correct way, so the sage is very pure, very well wrapped, and done so in a respectful manner. We're going to get the sage really flowing, and then we're going to start going over his entire body with the sage. And I'm just seeing what energies are responding to the sage. Where are we getting denser smoke so that I can pay attention to the places that need the work more. Right there I'm putting an intention into an area that's looking kind of rocky. And pulling energy away from him. So because he's an energetic healer and keeps himself really clean, this is not a really billowing sage experience. Sometimes we will have just a cloud of sage around someone who hasn't ever been saged before. Now he's getting a lot of activity in his hands, and the reason for that is because he's a massage therapist. So when he's energetically healing someone, his hands are what does most of the work. So he's going to have a lot of buildup of toxic energy on his hands from the work that he does. We can also use Purell to discharge some of that energy. It's really great for relieving negative energy. He had his heart chakra reacting a little bit on the pendulum, and we can see that right around the heart area we're having the billowing of the smoke. So we want to make sure it's nice and clean there. But he had just had a falling out with a friend the week before, which caused the imbalance in the heart chakra. And those are the things you find out with the Platica when you're talking to your client. What's hurting them? What brought them here? We also want to pay attention to the bottoms of the feet, because that's where a lot of our toxins are going to come out too. And so we have almost completed the sage bath. We're pulling away some final dense areas. And now we're going to move on to the egg. So we're spraying the egg with the same Florida water that we put in the water for the egg. We're going to have him blow on it really hard. There we go, and we got it. So he's going to just relax, and we're going to go all over his body, scrubbing aggressively with the egg. Getting right into those lymph nodes at the neck, and the base of the skull, and blessing his face. Getting on down into the K27s right below the collarbone. All of those places where negativity tends to collect. Now we're just holding it against the jawline to release any pressure that he might have inside the head. And right on those K27s up into the shoulders. We're using the crochitas on his hands because of the buildup in sage smoke that we saw there. We want to pay close attention to those. And as I said, you're getting in really close and intimate with your client because you are going to really scrub down every part of their body with this egg. If at any time during the egg work you start to feel like the egg is really getting dry and it's hard to move it, you can always squirt it again with the Florida water and do more. You'll just know when the egg is finished. It'll start to feel like it's just done, just like if you're shuffling tarot cards and you know when your shuffle is done. So now we're going to the back of the body. If you have any problems feeling the energy move when you're doing a Limpia, check for things like some people can't do what I'm doing here and have their fitness band on as they're doing it because the energy interrupts the flow of them being able to feel. Pay attention to things like a knife the client might have in their pocket that is the iron is interrupting the flow of energy. See what is causing the energy flow to not be patent there. And we're going all down the body, all the way through. Just like that. Getting any last little bits with the egg, making sure that everything feels nice and clean. Double check on the front. Have him blow again, just to make sure. And then then we're breaking the egg into the jar, sealing up the jar and getting the wing. I'm going to do a really quick dial in of his areas where we were seeing some weird energy, just to clear out those spaces. The chime is resonating to clear that out. You want to give it a nice little whack with the tamper to get a really resonant sound that's going to carry for a while, just to get your client good and cleaned out. So then we're going to go to, in my case, well, no, I'm actually going back to the chakra to make sure everything's still good there. Okay, so his heart's firing normally now. And he looks good. So we're just going to do the burrito to sweep away anything that's extra that's left. My husband gives it the thumbs up as he's recording. And then we're just going to sweep him down really aggressively. Get him to take a big deep breath and sweep away. And we are being very aggressive with the sweeping. This isn't something precious. We are really getting in there and dusting out the cobwebs. All right. And then I also like to take what we call the Holy Aquanet, which is the Pastor Davis, and spray down the client. In his case, I'm using holy water to bless and anoint him. And we usually have some nice music playing in the background to help the client relax. In our particular environment, we have windows all across this wall that look out onto the mountains, so it's a very peaceful and relaxing place to get cleansed. I'm anointing each of his chakra points in turn with the holy water. And that's Limpia. That's how we do it. So, this is Maddie with his egg. And you can see that we have a little bit of a fortress formation around there because, yes, he was doing some isolating due to some experiences he had just had. And that's how Limpia is performed, at least in our shop. Now, anything that I just described about the Limpia, I also do by remote or proxy work. You can do this once you've stepped up a little bit. I really recommend working on people who are present for several years at first before you try the proxy work. With the remote work that I do, I have a proxy vessel, and this is my proxy vessel here. He's called Barracuda, and he stands in for the client. So I will have my laptop on with a photograph of the client on the screen, and I'll lay my proxy vessel, Barracuda, out in front of the screen, hold my hands on each side of him, and ask him to receive the spirit of the client. And I'll be looking at the client directly into the eyes until I feel that energy of the client capture in my proxy vessel, Barracuda. I have another one called Meredith McRae, who also receives very easily the energy of the client. And so once I know that I've got the client into the vessel, I will perform exactly the same techniques, exactly the same steps that I use if the person is in front of me, except I'm doing it to the vessel, the doll, the teddy bear, whatever you might be using, and it works. I mean, you still get the same results. We still read the egg the same way, and the person feels the lightning. I have a very beloved client down in Southern California who is an energy worker, and he will message me and say, hey, I picked something up. Can you clean me out? And then I'll do the cleansing, and he will know exactly when I did it, and will message me and say, yep, you got it. It's good. So it does work by remote. It's just that you have to be very good at reading energy patterns, very good at remote delivery of energy. If you are a level 2 Reiki worker, you've already had training in that. It's very effective with this as well. So definitely look into the idea of remote and proxy work if this is something you do and you're really good at it. I have very good luck with the proxy work. So if any of you desire to Limpia, I can certainly do that through the proxy vessel. I would just need your actual name that you use in life, not the one your mom called you if that's not what you use, and a photograph of what you look like now, and then I can connect with you. I also sometimes am doing Limpias on people who don't know that I'm doing Limpias on them. So somebody will send me an email and say, hey, you've got to Limpia my kid. They're 29 years old. They won't get a job. I think they've got something attached to them that's keeping them from being successful. And so I will do the Limpia on them at the behest of someone else. So that's what I do. That's how we do the Limpia. After the healing has completed, I will usually give the person a care sheet, an aftercare sheet that just says that they might feel wonky for a day or so, because I've been in there monkeying with their energy quite a bit. So some people will feel really fatigued. Some people feel really amazing. Some people get a little bit nauseated, especially if we've pulled out something that's been there for a long time. Because even if it's something bad, if it's been there for 20 years, they will feel the absence of that being there. And so I caution them to know that your energy might feel off for a little bit. You might have trouble grounding. Let's get you safe somewhere. Just act like you've got the flu for a day and practice good safe care. You'll be fine. We can continue to get energy toward them using candle work or other spell work to facilitate what they want to do. So maybe they had a Limpia to remove any obstacles to love, and then we start doing the Chuparosa candle or the Come to Me candle or the Love Honey candle. If they are having problems with money, then we would start the Showers of Gold candle or the Money Drawing candle, or just making use of that energy that we've got them all cleaned out. Now let's get the energy flowing in the direction they want it to go. And I tell you what, after I've done Limpia, I want to eat. It's amazing how much this energy this takes to perform Limpia. So if you're going to give it a try, make sure that you allow time for yourself to recover. Don't perform Limpia on somebody just when you're just coming in from work and you're exhausted. You need some time to meditate and get centered beforehand, and you need some time to come down afterwards. Even though you're channeling divine energy, and you're basically a conduit of divine energy, it still takes its toll on you. So you need to make sure that you have recovery time yourself after you have performed Limpia on somebody. So let's say that you want to do Limpia on somebody who really needs Limpia. If you feel comfortable as though you can mark and follow the energy flows in another person, make sure that you're doing the Platica to talk to them about what they're needing and what's going on. Make sure you do the sage bath or some form of it to get their the smoke moving and get them energetically cleaned out. Use the egg to pull out the deep-seated stuff that's in there, and then use the burrito to do the final sweep. Those are the steps for Limpia. I hope this class has helped you. If you are interested in ordering a Limpia for yourself, you can do that at crossroadsoccult.com. I'm going to take you right back up here to the me slide. crossroadsoccult.com. You would then click on Order Services Online, and there will be an option for Limpia there. If you do order Limpia, you also need to email me, and my email will also be on that page, to tell me what's going on with you, since if we're remote, I don't have the opportunity for a plotica, so I need to know what we're looking for, what we're working on. So that's what I do. A lot of my time in the shop is taken up with Limpias and spell work for people are mostly what I do 40-50 hours a week. So it's been a pleasure to teach this amazing technique to you. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to your comments. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. You're also welcome to contact me directly. Thanks for being here, everyone. Take care.